Hi, I'm Malik, I'm 21 from Manchester and I'm gay. I had quite a few experiences as a kid being labelled gay, which kind of started off as people saying that I was girly or feminine in primary school because apparently of the way I acted. Like, before I started school, I would say I was quite open and quite a happy kid. Even though I liked toy cars and trucks, I'd play with Barbies with my sister, I'd dress up with her, would always play games, and it was never anything that I thought about. But then when I got to school and people started saying that I was acting like a girl or that I was gay and things like that, it kind of made me become a lot more closed off, and I stopped doing those things quite consciously because I was so aware of what people were thinking of me and what people were saying about me. And even at school, in primary school, I did ballroom dancing competitively, and I stopped doing that before I started high school because of the comments I was getting from people saying that it was a girl's thing to do and that as a boy I shouldn't be doing that, and that really kind of took a toll on me in the way that I then decided to present myself at high school. Yeah, but that didn't really stop people asking me and kind of taunting me with it, and they would say it in a way that was like, oh, you did this, are you gay? Or you like this, are you gay? And because of the negativity that was behind what they were asking, it kind of made me feel negative about being gay, which I didn't even know that I was. I did a project in year 9 when we were doing our media studies GCSE, and it's called the BBC School Report. And basically what happens is a load of kids from school go and do a journalism day with the BBC, and while we were there, I was interviewed along with 2 of my friends by an adult journalist, and she kind of questioned us on the experience and things like that, and that video was put onto YouTube. And the one comment underneath this video on YouTube that I only found about through someone else teasing me about it was that it said, "The guy in the middle's gay." And that really hurt me because, like I said, I didn't even know if I was, and it was something at that point in year 9 that was on my mind so much, and I was trying to not show and trying to bury and, you know, being quite ashamed of, as sad as it sounds, for someone to say, oh yeah, there's a video on YouTube and people are making fun of you for it, was really sad. And they said it while I was walking home with my younger sister, so she had to experience that as well. And I know that during school, people would ask her about me and my sexuality, and I felt really bad that she also, just through relation, had to go through that as well. And I didn't want it to, you know, affect people outside of me, and I kind of didn't want to bother anyone else with it. Yeah, so that was quite a tough time, and I think that it just got worse as I got into my GCSEs, and the stress of that, as well as the stress of worrying about people finding out who I was, that really started to take its toll. I remember one day, one of my friends figured out the password for my phone and found some stuff on there that would kind of allude to me being gay, and she went and told people and showed people, and that was another moment that really shocked me. And I thought that if I was going to tell anyone, it would be them, and that they would be supportive of it. But it was blown up so much, and it made me not want to go to school, and I cried every day, and my mum wanted so hard to help me, but I knew that if I told her what had happened, I'd have to tell her kind of why it happened, and I really didn't want to, so I kept that to myself. And thinking back to it now, I kind of realised that that wasn't necessarily something that someone did to hurt me. It was just a childish thing, and I think that a lot of these instances of me being called gay or me being asked if I was gay when I was younger were just kind of kids being kids, and it's not excusable, and it's not me being like, oh, it's okay to mock people or bully people, because it's not. But I think that those people have now grown up, and from the conversations that I've had with those people and still have with those people today, I know that that's not how they feel, and I know that if I talk to them about it, they'd probably regret it and apologise. And I think we've both learned from that situation of how to treat people and how to kind of treat the issue that I was going through. I think I'd read somewhere that said that most LGBT people come out when they're at the age of 16 or something, and I thought, oh, time's ticking on. I've kind of got to make this decision and make this change. And when I got to college, I realised that whilst at secondary school, at high school, everyone would do anything to fit in and be like everyone else, whereas at college, everyone would do anything to kind of be different, and people did start coming out, and people would wear what they want, they would listen to what music they wanted, and I think individuality was a big part of college. So I kind of thought, oh, maybe I can, this is an environment that I can come out to people in and that I can feel safe in. But on one of the first days, I was sat in my English class with one of my friends, and she was wearing a really nice skirt. So I said, oh, I really like your skirt today. And the girl sat behind me kind of got my attention and was like, oh, are you gay? And this time it was completely different. It wasn't negative, it was purely curious, but I had that reaction that I had when I was a kid of it being something scary, and I kind of got defensive, and I was just like, no. And that I acted like I was kind of offended by the question, and I wish that I didn't. And I know that she was just thinking that people at that age were probably a lot more comfortable with themselves than I was. And yeah, that kind of made me take a step back and kind of think, oh, maybe I'm not actually ready for this yet. I would say that years from the end of high school until the end of college were probably at that time the worst that I'd felt about it, because like I said, some of my friends were coming out. I had LGBT plus friends at college, and I knew that they would be okay with me saying something, but I wasn't okay with myself, and it was really difficult. It was hard, and I didn't have the best time, but I kind of started to seeing how happy people could be being out. When I decided to go to university, I thought that that would be a perfect time to start coming out to people, because as much as I love my friends, if they weren't okay with it, I could, go off to university somewhere else and I wouldn't have to deal with that. And I kind of was prepared for that, and I started to come out to people, and I was ready to, if someone said to me, are you gay? I was ready to just say yeah and be okay with it. But it was kind of annoying because when I did get to university, no one asked me and no one cared, and it was such a nice environment to be in because I could be out to people. And I think because I did a creative course, I think it was something that didn't even faze people, and it was really nice actually. And I remember at the end of first year, one of the guys on my course asked if me and my best friend, who's a girl, if we were in a relationship, if she was my girlfriend, and I just kind of laughed it off and said, no, I've got a boyfriend. And it was funny, and it wasn't anything that was scary or daunting, or there's no negativity around it, and it was like a really nice turnaround and subversion of what I'd had before, and I felt completely different about it. So now I'm a lot more comfortable speaking about those types of things. I think something that a lot of people don't think about when LGBT plus people are coming out is the period that it takes to kind of come out to yourself. And I think a lot of people that aren't in that situation don't really realize that before you can tell anyone else, you have that moment where you stand in the mirror, where you kind of take a moment and just say, I'm gay, or I'm bisexual, or I'm trans, or whatever. And I think that's a massive turning point in a lot of LGBT plus people's lives, especially mine. I don't want to speak for everyone. It was, for me, the point where everything kind of turned around and where I was comfortable with myself. And I thought, even if no one else accepts me, I accept me, and it's not going to change the way that I feel about myself. I'm not going to feel any shame about it anymore. I'm not going to want to be any different than who I am. And that was really nice, actually. And because I'd had so long of being just so frustrated with it and wanting to change it, that moment where I did come out to myself and just think, what can I do? Like, I've kind of just got to get on with it and make the best out of it. That literally felt like a knot inside my stomach untangled and a cloud kind of lifted over my head, and it was a really nice moment. And it kind of came when it was between college and university, and I was kind of toying with the idea of coming out to people. Toying makes it sound really fun. It wasn't. But yeah, I was kind of battling with that. Do I come out? Do I not? Because I wanted to be open with my friends at university, and I didn't want to feel like anything would be holding me back there. So I think it was during Caitlyn Jenner's like big public transformation in front of the media, in front of the cameras. She made her own documentary, and I think I watched the first episode of that and thought that if someone in such a public platform can make such a public transformation, change the way that they look, change their name, change the way that people see them, I kind of thought that I can say that I'm gay to my small group of friends and just start making moves to, you know, being out to people. And yeah, it was a kind of realization that it wasn't the most important thing in the world, and it wasn't really anything that I should be paying too much attention to, and there are much bigger things that are going on, and me being gay in the grand scheme of things didn't really matter too much, as it mattered to me. You know, it wasn't the be all and end all of my life, and I felt a lot more positive about it then, and I feel a lot more positive about it now. Like, I never imagined that I'd be sitting talking to someone about this moment and coming out, and I never thought I'd be so open with myself and other people, and I think it's a really nice turnaround. And I don't think that people outside of this community really think about that moment of coming to terms with it yourself. And I think that is a really big stepping stone in being open with everyone else. I think a big thing with LGBT plus young people especially is the impact that it can have on their mental well-being, because of rejection and homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, bullying and hate crime and all things like that. And not everyone has a hard time with the mental health being LGBT plus. Just so happened that I did. I think that even before I kind of realised I was gay and stuff, I don't think my mental health was that great, but that just added a complete new layer on top of it that was quite a big deal to me and was quite hard to come to terms with before I kind of started to come out to people. I think that the things that people were saying to me at school, accusing me of being gay because of what I liked and didn't like and my interests, they really had a big toll on my mental health, a lot more than I think I ever wanted to admit to anyone. And I really didn't want to talk about it because I knew that if I told someone how depressed I was feeling or how anxious I was about doing certain things, that they would then ask why, and I'd have to tell them that it was because I was struggling so much with my sexuality. And that kind of made it even worse because I knew that I was feeling so down, but I couldn't tell anyone about it. And like I said, I got to my kind of lowest point at the end of college, where I had friends that were out and friends that I knew that were in same-sex relationships. And as much as I was over the moon for them and so happy for them. I was so angry at myself because I couldn't be as open as they were. I was just very down and depressed, and one of my friends kind of realised and texted me and asked what was wrong. She's called Emily, and she's amazing and did everything right, and I kind of just told her everything. It was the right place at the right time, and I think because it was over text, it didn't kind of feel as daunting, and I could write out what I wanted to say, and I could say everything how I wanted to say it, and I was in charge of the conversation, and she wasn't pressuring me in any way. And I think that it was a really lovely moment. I still have screenshots of that text thread of, her saying that she loves me no matter what, and I just look at it sometimes when I am feeling not so great, and it just reminds me that, I am loved and I am wanted, and me being gay doesn't change what people think about me. And I think that her texting me that day was kind of a miracle, because even my parents and teachers were starting to get worried about me at college, and my grades weren't doing so well, and it was just such a heavy thing that was on my shoulders and on my mind, and it was something that I thought about every single day. And for her to kind of be brave enough to just take that step and be like, if you don't want to say anything, you don't have to, but is it because of such and such? And I was just like, yeah, and I felt so safe in telling her, and it was such a weight off my shoulders. I think I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever, and it was kind of brilliant. That coming out to the first person that I came out to was definitely a massive moment that kind of led me to being here today, I guess. I think you could say that my family dynamic was quite typical, like quite a nuclear family. I have my mum and my dad, they're not divorced. I have me and my younger sister, and the kind of only thing that was different there was that my dad is from Sudan and he's Muslim, and I think that kind of religious aspect played into how I felt about my sexuality. I think a lot of people kind of think that religion is very against people being LGBT plus or whatever, or different, or not conforming in every way to what the kind of holy book says. And I think that played on my mind a lot, and I always wondered if my family wouldn't support me and kind of be there for me. But after starting to come out to my friends, they would always ask me, oh, so when are you going to tell your family? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know how they're going to react. Like, they might not be completely happy with it. It might take some time. And then I think one of my friends was just like, deep down that they love you no matter what. Like, they are going to be okay. And even if it does take some time, so what? Everything takes time. Any change would have had an impact on them. I did kind of think about that, and like deep down, I did know that even if at first it might not have been the best, that later on down the line, and now it has turned out to be a great thing, because I'm a lot closer to them. I can talk with them about certain things, and yeah, it's really nice. I kind of wanted to come out to my friends first and kind of gauge their reactions on it, and I think I was a bit more hesitant with my family because of what I just said, and because with friends, I guess if they don't support you or accept you, you can kind of break ties with them, and you don't have to have a relationship with that person. Whereas with family, I think it's quite different, and I was scared that me telling them would kind of change our dynamic and what I felt was quite a pleasant family life. And because I thought I had it so good, I didn't want to do anything to ruin that. So it took me quite a while to come to terms with the idea of coming out to them. And I think it was only really once I got a boyfriend that I thought I should really tell them about this, because it became a much bigger part of my life and I didn't want to, hide that from them, and I felt bad doing so. I tried over Christmas when I first came back from my first term of university in 2015. I thought maybe I could just tell one of them, and my dad and sister, I think they went to London for the weekend, and it was just me and my mum, and I tried to tell her a few times and I just completely chickened out, and it didn't feel right, and I felt like I was kind of forcing myself to do it, which I didn't want to do. I wanted it to be natural and at the right time. So I waited a little bit longer, and Easter 2016 came up, and I was getting more serious with my boyfriend. I think he felt a bit frustrated that my family didn't know, because his mum and stepdad knew and we were getting on well, and I think he maybe thought that I was ashamed of us or something, and I really wasn't. I eventually decided that I was going to tell them some point throughout the Easter break, and it was getting really close to the time that I was supposed to go back to university, so I just decided that because I didn't want to chicken out and I didn't want to have a moment where I started a conversation with them and then just stopped and was like, no, okay, we'll talk about this again. I wrote them all letters, personalized them all, made them kind of talk about our relationships and where we'd been throughout our life and stuff like that. And on my last day, when I was going back up to university, I left those letters on their pillows and fled. And I thought, if it doesn't go well, I don't have to kind of deal with that, and we can kind of talk from a distance, and there wouldn't be as much tension. And if there was any tension, I didn't want to be in the house, and I didn't want to kind of expose myself to that. And I knew deep down that if they weren't okay with it straight away, that they would be okay with it. But I just thought for my own kind of well-being that I would leave them to it, because I was fine with it. I thought I'll just go back to university, get on with everything, they can kind of deal with that. And I don't know if that sounds really selfish of me, but I just kind of thought that was the best. And my stomach was doing front flips, back flips, somersaults, whatever, on that journey back to university. And my mum phoned me at about 7 p.m. that night. And I think she just said to me, I'm so happy. She was like absolutely over the moon that I'd finally told her. She was kind of like, oh, we always knew, but I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to upset you. She has a few LGBT plus friends that she's known since she was in school, and she'd asked them about it, like, what do I do? Should I ask him? And they kind of just said, no, we'll do it in his own time, and when he's ready, he'll tell you. And she kind of told me all that, and I was like, oh my God, so you've been having the same kind of worries that I've been having this whole time. And it was really nice that she was so kind of happy for me. Yeah, that was really nice. My sister said that she cried and and was just like completely over the moon that I'd finally felt comfortable enough to tell her. My sister has literally always been like my biggest like cheerleader and hype girl, and she's always stood up for me. Like even in school, when people would call me names or whatever, she'd always stand up for me. And kind of back then, it was a bit embarrassing. So I was like, my little sister's kind of, fighting my fights for me, and I didn't really appreciate it until I got older, and I really do appreciate it now. And she's amazing, and she was brilliant, and was like, so then who's your boyfriend? And I was like, that's a story for another day. Like, we've just got this over with. Like, let's kind of get through that at another time with introductions and everything. And then she was on the phone to me, and she said, well, is it this guy? And I couldn't say no. She got it right first time. And I was like, how did you know? And she said, well, he's been tagging you and stuff in Facebook for like the last 5 months. And I kind of wondered what the thing was here. And I just thought that was kind of funny that she'd kind of sussed me out straight away. My dad, he sent me a text, and he was like, thanks for letting us know. We kind of already knew, but you've confirmed it, kind of. And he was saying that he still loves me and everything, and that was really nice, especially to hear from him, because he was the one that I was most worried about. And yeah, he took it really well. And I remember that we were talking a few months ago, and he was saying, so why didn't you kind of tell us earlier? Because they knew how much of an impact it had on like my mental well-being and stuff. And I kind of paused for a minute and thought, and said to him, it wouldn't have been right if I'd have told them earlier. Like, I wasn't okay with myself, and I hadn't accepted myself yet. And whilst I wish that I could have been more okay with myself and more proud of who I am, and would have liked to have told them, that wasn't the case. And I think you really have to wait until the right time. And I think when that time is. It just feels so right. And I think for anyone that's kind of questioning whether they should come out to someone, I think they should kind of think about whether or not it's a safe environment to do so. I kind of came up with a plan of what to do if it all went wrong, and I think that whilst that was quite a pessimistic thing to do, you do hear stories about people being disowned by the families and people, being kicked out. And I remember a lot of the LGBT plus stories that I was seeing when I was a kid in soap operas and stuff. A lot of that was very dramatic and very overplayed. And I remember a storyline in EastEnders where this Muslim guy fell for another guy, and he was engaged to a woman, and his family completely did not understand and kind of shunned him. And that was almost what I thought would happen to me. And that wasn't the case at all, but I was very wary of telling people, and that contributed a lot to me being able to. So I think, if you're going to come out to people, it has to be the right time for you, irregardless of whether or not they're asking or you think they might already know. I think in terms of my grandparents and older generations in my family, I didn't actually tell them. I think my mum did. She kind of took it upon herself to, with my permission obviously, to like let extended family know, and not like, oh, Malik's gay or whatever. It was like, oh, Malik's got a boyfriend, he's coming around on Christmas, like if you want to meet him, kind of thing. So it's not a big shock for everyone. And she told my grandma first, I think, and my grandma phoned me and was like, oh, do you want to go out for lunch? And I was very anxious about that. And we went for lunch, and we just sat down, and she was like, oh, just so you know, I've known since you were about 4, and I'm just so glad that you're now happy enough to let us know. And I thought that was really nice. And my granddad, while he doesn't necessarily understand it or whatever, there's no sort of hostility or negativity around it, and he's met my boyfriend I don't know how many times, and they seem to get on, and it's really nice. And I think a couple of times whilst I've been in a relationship, he's asked if I'm going to get a girlfriend or whatever, and I'm kind of just like, well, the idea is that I don't want a girlfriend, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But it is just, I think, for older people about kind of learning and adapting and things like that. And I remember over summer 2018, my great granddad was in hospital and he was dying basically, and he passed away a few days later. And one of the last things that he said to me was, we were all kind of sat in the hospital with him, and he was talking about his favourite memories of us all. And he just looked at me and he went, I remember when you were 4 years old and you were dressed up, you and your sister, and you didn't have a care in the world, and you were so lovely, and you still are, and I love you. And I thought that that was like the nicest, most heartwarming thing that anyone's ever really said to me about it. Like, he was 94, and that kind of shocked me in a way that someone that old would kind of understand and still not really care. And it was just really nice. And because of the situation that we were in, I knew that it was genuine, because he didn't really have anything to lose. He could have been gone in the next 10 minutes for all he knew. So I think, as sad as that situation was, him kind of saying that just took another weight off my shoulder that I didn't even know that I had. And it was brilliant. And to know that all these generations in my family are accepting me and supporting me and being there for me, it's lovely, and I couldn't really ask for anything better. And I think it does just show that even if you are in a really terrible place, that things can get better. And in most cases, they will get better. Whether it's with your family or not, you will find your own family somewhere else, and there will always be someone that loves you and accepts you. And it doesn't matter who you are, who you love, tall, short, fat, thin, what your religion is, there will always be someone that is there and cares and understands. And I think that's something that I've learned throughout this whole journey, and I'm so thankful for the people that I've had around me for kind of creating that environment where I can be myself.